Okay, today I'm going to be showing you how to change the oil in a Lexus Hybrid SUV. This is a 2007 RX400h. This is very similar across all of the hybrid SUVs from Toyota or Lexus. Same procedure in the Highlander, and you could really adapt this to a lot of cars. So let's start by going underneath the car or the vehicle and placing an oil drain pan. You definitely want to have something to catch the used oil in. You do not want this spilling out everywhere. So most Toyotas use a 14 millimeter socket. So you just want to loosen up the oil drain pan bolt. And just be careful here, depending on when the vehicle was last used, you're probably going to get some oil in your hand. But if the engine's hot, the oil could definitely be hot enough to burn you. So just be careful with that. So I always like to let it drain and go do something else. I like to make sure it's drained. I'm not in a rush, so I'll come back at a later point, go do something else on my honey-do list, and then come back after everything is good. My next suggestion, so take your oil drain pan bolt and go wash it off in the sink. Wash it off with some soap and water and make sure it's really clean, and replace the little crush washer that's on there with a nice shiny new one. You can buy a packet of those for like $5 on Amazon. So always replace the little crush washer just to make sure you have a nice seal. So now that it's drained out, you've cleaned the bolt. Always look for any metal shavings on it as well, just so you can tell if there's any inappropriate wear going on. So I always like to torque my oil drain pan bolts. Typically it's 20 to 25 foot-pounds. On this one it's 20. You can look up those specs online. So I'm going to show you two ways to change the oil filter, depending on if you have small hands like me or not. So this is the easiest way if you have small hands or a really nice oil filter wrench. Take off those 3 10 millimeter bolts up there, and that cover will pop off, and you'll see what that looks like. The other method is to get underneath the car and to take off these 10 millimeter bolts, and some of them might have Phillips screws in them. So you're just basically removing this cover from underneath the car, and then you'll need to remove these two pop plugs right here as well by just popping the center out. There's one on either side. This is a way that works for anybody, whether you have small hands or not. So just want you to be aware of both ways. I frequently do it from the top, but if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I have small girl hands, so I take advantage of them when I can. You also could probably do it if you had a nice oil filter wrench, which I don't have. But if you come in from underneath, you'll see real easy now to get to the oil filter. But before you take the oil filter off, make sure you have your oil drain pan handy, because some oil is going to leak out of there. And there is a little catch. The oil should start draining and flow to a specific point, usually right behind the oil filter. So what I like to do is just loosen the oil filter with the oil filter wrench, and once you get it loose enough, you can basically remove it the rest of the way with your hand. And again, if the vehicle is hot, you need to be very careful, because you're working right up against the exhaust system, and the oil and oil filter will be hot. So you see the oil starting to drain down. So make sure you have your oil filter pan. You can see that it kind of funnels it down through a specific path. You shouldn't get too much to drain out. Obviously oil filters don't hold a ton of oil, but they do hold a little bit. So just remove this with your hand, being careful when it does finally break loose that you can catch it. And ideally keep it pointed up so the oil doesn't come splashing down. So that's the easy part with the filter. And then you can dispose of that. Usually the same places except your oil, like all the auto parts stores, will take your used oil filters as well. But please recycle this stuff. Now, one tip you definitely want to know, take some clean, fresh oil. And I'm doing this one-handed because I have the camera, so it's a struggle. But put a little bit of oil on the O-ring or the little gasket here. It helps make sure you get a tight seal when you put it back on. And I also recommend you take a lint-free cloth and just clean off the mating surfaces of where the oil filter goes. It's nice just to get up in there and get any of the oil that kind of leaked out. Plus, there could be some dirt and grime in there. Just get the oil filter started with your hand, and all that you really want to do is hand tighten the oil wrench. It's really hard to correctly torque an oil filter with a oil filter wrench, so hand tighten it as tight as you possibly can get with just one hand. That's my policy. So come back up top, and now it's time to refill. So look up the specs for your specific make and model. to see how much oil you should add. You know, most vehicles typically hold around 5 quarts, and an oil change doesn't get all of the oil out of the system, so it's hard to say, but just look yours up online. And if yours says that it takes 5 quarts for a complete refill, I always like to start by putting 4 quarts in, do 1 quart less, and then pull the dipstick out and check it until it gets halfway between these 2 dots. And if you have trouble reading on oil dipstick, I have another video I'll link below on how to do that. But once you do all of that, once you have the oil level correct, take the vehicle for a quick drive and then come back. Once it cools down, maybe 10 minutes, check it again and make sure the oil level is still right, because by then the oil filter will have refilled, so you may be a little low. And also, that's a good time to look underneath the vehicle and check for any leaks. So that's it. Sorry about the quality of this video and how shaky it was. I recorded this actually a long time ago and just forgot to edit it and upload it, but figured I would upload it because I knew it would help a few people out there. So hope it helps. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.